Hello. One assignment that really emphasized Module 6 and that understanding of foundational skills and ethical practices was from the introduction of teaching students with mild and moderate disabilities. And that was the assignment, the Personnel, Procedures, and Practices paper that we did. Through this assignment, it really offered an in-depth look into the entire process of pre-evaluation, which is not a special education aspect, through the actual evaluation, permissions, testing, development of the IEP, and it offered me really a deep understanding as to what those procedures were, who implements those procedures, and how we do it within this district, and then how that stacks up with what we should be doing. Do we meet the expectations? Do we exceed the expectations? And so that really gave me an informed view of those aspects of it. Within that, again, I was able to look at areas of growth within my district and where they fall and how we align with some of those CEC ethical practices and standards that they outline for us, as they are one of the authorities on it. Through the research of DESE and my district's local plan, I was able to figure out what we do, specifically what policies are in place with that. An additional assignment that really emphasized the course and module objectives for Module 6 was Transition in Career and Education for students with disability. The PD activity where we work collaboratively with peers to plan and actually execute professional development really brought into focus a lot of the module objectives. And also the CEC, namely Professional Practice 1.4, create safe, effective, culturally responsive learning environments which contribute to the fulfillment of needs, stimulation of learning, and the realization of positive concepts. As the assignment focuses on transition, a lot of that is basing it on their needs, having that self-determination, self-realization, and going into a successful post-secondary transition is the whole concept of that assignment and a transition. On the professional ethical standards, 2, 4, and 12 really hit home on it. Maintaining high levels of professional competence, integrity, and exercising professional judgment to benefit the individual with exceptionalities and their families. And a lot of the policies we have are in place to protect the individuals and to involve the families as kind of an accountability piece for the staff, and an engagement and accountability piece for the families as well. Additionally, ethical principle 4, practicing collegially with others and provide services with individuals with exceptionalities. That is the basis of this assignment. We're not necessarily co-workers in a district, but within the field. And so we're coming together to address needs that go beyond just our individual district and just as a field and students in general. And again, participating in the growth, dissemination of professional knowledge and skills. Through this program, we're learning professional skills, professional knowledge to really maintain that lifelong learner and being at the top of where we should be within special education. And This module has huge applicability and importance within the field of special education, namely those foundational skills, professional and ethical principles and practice standards really work to protect the student and the staff member. Much like my seatbelt here in a car accident or a bike helmet in a bike accident, it really works to help protect students. Addressing that eighth ethical principle, neither engaging nor tolerating the practice that would harm students with exceptionalities, individuals with exceptionalities, really goes back to this. And the nature of special education is addressing those specific and unique needs of students that have those exceptionalities. And these policies and practices are put into place, again, to hold staff accountable and to increase consistency and the availability to address that free, appropriate public education for students with exceptionalities. So this is a hugely important thing, to provide adequate and consistent supports for students, as well as accountability for that staff member. Even as recently as March of 2019, the Journal of Educational Leadership wrote an article, and it focused namely on the role of the Director of Special Education, as they are the master and the leader of applying these principles and standards within a district. And within that article, it did a quantitative analysis of standards and quantitatively assessed the 25 competencies associated with effective special education leadership, and then put them into clusters. The idea was if some of these skill contents are not perceived by the practitioners as being important, then they might not be fully actualized, and that'll affect the framework and treatment of the students with disabilities, with exceptionalities within the district. And the idea of having the practice standards, the principles, all at the forefront of the educator's thinking will again add to that accountability piece to affect special education at the student level, at the state level, and shrink some of that legal budget, as the job of me as a special educator is to aid students, aid parents in understanding their students' rights, being self-advocates, and doing those things that protect themselves within those policies. And so it is a responsibility of myself as an educator to apply this knowledge to my practice, to apply it to my students' learning so they can be good self-advocates, and to find community resources for them, again, that help them be self-advocates. And so these policies are a huge piece of accountability and insurance and, again, protection for your life so these students can address their needs. And so that's a huge part of what policies and practice standards are in place for. Hi, for analysis and evaluation, I wanted to focus on the ethical practices and policies and how they affect students as they grow out of special education. When the letter of policy does not match the spirit of the policy and the supporting of students with special needs, how do we as special educators address that? How far can we bend some of those policies and those rules to address student need and to help propel them into achieving their goals and achieving success? This comes to mind due to a student that we had last year in the 4th grade that had moved out of many of his special education services. However, he had many physical impediments that stopped him from being able to function in the general education classroom. He was unable to write. He had palsy, cerebral palsy, and so he was unable to scribe for himself. He had a lot of hygiene issues due to this this ailment, this disease. He also had speech was his primary special education need, and he had tested out of that, as I had mentioned, but he still had several speech needs. So we as a class had to really, as a grade level, had to go to the MTSS table and bring these challenges this young man faced. And when it came to the 504, many of his modifications were changed, and he came to us from another district in which where this was planned for him. But where can we, as special educators and general educators working collaboratively, address these? And so those resources are your process consultants, your MTSS team, or your special education team, and how do you change where those are? So obviously, reflection on school policy, district policy, is another resource and where you can find this information. Additionally, I wanted to speak on, as special educators, determining if someone in a leadership position is putting you in a position that compromises any of those ethical standards, those ethical principles, in which case you are, or is it just a misunderstanding? An article I read that addresses this is the 7 basic steps of solving ethical dilemmas in special education, a decision-making framework, in which pose that having a decision-making process framework has many strengths over that of a code of conduct framework like we follow with the CEC code of conduct, ethical standards, and in which case the perspectives within the decision-making framework, the justice, critique, care, professionalism, all merge together to form a more cohesive view on what the challenges that are being posed, the questions being asked, and so the merits of that, and how that aligns with some of the district thinking was my question. And obviously resources for this, again, your process consultant, your leader, your educational leader within the building, your principal, as well as your process consultant again, I suppose. Another thing would be mentor teachers and the partnership of newer special education staff with a more senior special education staff within the building, so you still have that constant contact, that easy contact where that person could go and ask questions and see if things are being followed, if they're following those standards that we hold ourselves to, and meeting those principles that all come down to that principle 8 is doing no harm to students and not allowing harm to be done to students in any way. And even if it's unintentional, it's something that we as special educators need to be aware of. And so which of those frameworks, the decision-making framework or the core standards framework, better addresses that. And so professional articles referring to your professional organizations, the NEA or the MSTA. Finally, I want to talk about opportunities I still have to learn and then growth that I had throughout this program. A huge opportunity for growth that I had was the PPP assignment, which gave me a real in-depth look at the personnel, the policies, the procedures that my district employees has mandated by the state and IDEA. That was a huge learning opportunity for me. I think another strength that we all have as educators is that honesty and desire to better students' lives, because teaching isn't just a job, it really is a calling. You have to really be invested in and want to do it. And I feel like that drive is a strength that we have to address these policies and ethical dilemmas that we will face as educators and have faced as educators. Finally, another strength was delivering the PD over transition services and transition as a whole through the transition in education and career class was a great strength, a great opportunity I had for growth. As far as opportunities that I still have to grow, every year my district offers compliance training over policies and procedures that may have changed, or a review over existing policies, and that is an opportunity I have to continue to in understanding my responsibilities as an educator. Additionally, reviewing journals, like I mentioned, in the Journal of Educational Leadership, as well as the CEC's blog for policy updates. Those are all huge as far as trends change, as problems may arise. Those will keep me up to date, namely the blog on what's current. Being a part of a professional organization is also a great opportunity for success. And this year we have a unique opportunity for growth, a challenge, as we go from the self-contained platform of special education more into a cross-categorical platform of special education, and that will result in some changes for staffing, the way we deliver instruction, and some of the students within our classrooms as we make that change as a district. And I think that through these opportunities of growth and maintaining current on policies, procedures from the state, from my district, those are going to be a great chance for me to maintain and to grow as an educator.